All right, welcome to another episode of the Mike Small podcast where we talk about stuff that's interesting to me. So you're welcome. On this episode, we have Tom Perez, where he has quite a life. He used to be in cybersecurity, used to do some stuff with the government. Now he's working in the financial space. Which is kind of where I met him at a local networking meetup here. Shout out to Tech Eat here in Charleston, South Carolina. Yeah, we're just going to talk about stuff, some finance stuff. We had a guy on a previous podcast where we were talking about kind of our financial journeys. Why not have a financial guy on?
There you go.
So welcome, Tom. Do you want to give a little background about how you ended up where you are? I know we've talked about it, but
Yeah,
obviously they don't know.
100%. Yeah. So thanks for having me on. It's great to be here. So I kind of a long journey. I'll try to be as succinct as possible. Joined the Navy right out of high school, as a lot of kids did. I grew up in the 80s and got sucked into the Navy propaganda movies of the 80s, the Top Gun and Navy SEALs and those movies. I went in the submarine service. I was a Navy submariner. Did was a submarine radioman. That's where I first got into communications, IT, cyber, that kind of world. And I got there by accident. That's another story I won't bore you with. Was also one of the Navy divers on the sub. And then
Oh,
I did 8 years total on active duty as a diver and radioman on the sub, and then on shore duty as well. And then I left active, went into reserves, and on the civilian side, that's when I went to work for the government. I would work for the DoD over in a place called War. Now it's called War in San Diego. That's where I met my wife, and then we moved to Charleston, South Carolina in 2006, and continued working for the government. Left War Pacific in San Diego to work for War Atlantic here in Charleston, and now it's called Nywick Atlantic. And did that while I went to college on my GI Bill, and through an interesting story, I ended up getting falling in love with finance and all things financial. So I was initially majoring in engineering because I needed to be an engineer at War. And right when we after we moved here, we said we need to meet with the financial advisor, and so we found a guy who was written a book, and he was doing a book signing outside of a Barnes and Noble in downtown. That's not now it's a restaurant, and he agreed to meet with me, gave me some free advice, and I told him the story about when I re-enlisted and I got a $35,000 bonus. And what I proceeded to do with $35,000 when I was a 21-year-old single sailor, which was not very responsible. I made it rain. I went to the Florida Keys and hung out in Margaritaville, and then went snow skiing in Canada, tricked out my apartment. I did not buy a truck, which is what most guys did. Um, I did open a TD Ameritrade account and started doing just some trading on my own and kind of just learning my little sandbox there. But he taught me about compounding returns and how if I had put that money to all of it or most of it into the market and then contributed to it, how it could have grown it, and it could have been 4x by that time. And that kind of inspired me. So I took a macroeconomics course over at Trident Technical College. This is an elective, and the guy who taught it was a retired CEO who was just bored teaching classes at night in the summer of 2008. So those my age will remember 2008 financial crisis, and the summer of '08 was when things started imploding on themselves. And so I'm studying Keynesian economics in real time while I'm watching the economy implode on itself. And I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. I want to get in this world. So I changed majors, ended up getting a degree in business administration with an emphasis in finance. And it was either investment banking or financial planning, wealth management, which is what I do now. I talked to an investment banker in New York through the Citadel network. I went to the Citadel, by the way. And yeah, he taught me off that ledge. So I initially went to work for a startup. I left the government, went to work for a startup doing business development consulting in the defense industry, helping companies like Booz Allen Hamilton and some other small businesses get on defense contracts, which I did not like. The company I liked, the owner was great, but the work itself was just not for me. It was kind of soul sucking. So a few years later, I met a guy on LinkedIn, another retired Navy guy who was at Northwestern Mutual, and he said, "Let's meet for coffee," and I did. And he told me about how they operate and the independence of it, and you can kind of set up your own shop underneath their shield, so to speak. And so yeah, the rest is history. I became a financial advisor all the while staying in the Navy Reserves, and I ended up getting commissioned as an information warfare officer. Um, they do cyber intel IT comms for the Navy. So I did that, deployed to Afghanistan in 2017, 2018, and cyber operations over in Afghanistan. Did that for a year, kind of year break there for military deployment. And then I retired from the Navy in 2023 as a O4 information warfare officer. And so I kind of had two careers there for a while. Now I'm just one doing financial planning, where my business is built around. I'm kind of a financial architect of sorts, that I focus on two streams of effort, working with closely held businesses, um, and doing their buy-sell arrangements and qualified plans and tax shelters and stuff like that. And then I do personal financial planning and wealth management for families, individuals, and then I kind of got a niche there working with military guys. I speak VA fluently and TSP and stuff like that. I do a lot of military transition. So that's as short as I can make it. Sorry.
That's a man of multiple lives there. I didn't realize you just got out. Maybe I heard it while I was drinking at Tech Eat one evening, but I didn't realize you got out. So you went in as enlisted working on submarines, and then you went into the Navy Reserves and then commissioned later on?
Yeah, yeah. I think
Wow.
if I back up the camera, you can see my pictures there on the wall of one. That's my boot camp photo, and that's the other one is when my retirement photo as a.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that. I have a kind of bookends my career.
So what did you end up getting out as an officer?
Oh 04, which in the Navy speak as lieutenant commander, would be an Army major.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
That's cool, man. Yeah, you have had multiple lives. That's wild.
like a cat, man.
Yeah.
I've got three left. Three left. What are they gonna be?
I always like to say I have zero left after my experiences overseas.
Yeah.
Uh, so I have a follow up question about your submarine time.
Hmm.
I'm sure you've seen the movie, but this is what movie makes. This is what I think of when I think of radio operator on a submarine is down periscope, the guy with yeah.
100% accurate. 100% accurate. Yeah. Great. It's a great movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
classic submarine movie.
Yeah. Well, the part that was most accurate was the radioman, and he's doing something we call self-testing. So instead of having actual test equipment to test the circuit, you just, lick your fingers and, it's like the circuit board there, and you're like cold, cold, hot, cold, hot.
Is that a real
That,
thing? Do you actually do that, or are you messing with me right now?
no, we did it. We're not supposed
No.
to. It's like against regulations. But guys, yeah, it's like you're trying to figure out, is the power on or not? Is it, is the circuit complete or not? And you can either get up, this is how lazy sailors are, and go get your fluke test equipment there, or you can just go, yep, it's hot, so it works. And yeah,
I feel
so
like that's a good way to start your morning, instead of reaching for the coffee pot, you're like, let me test my equipment. All right, I'm
yeah.
up. Let's do this thing. Yeah. Or you're getting tired on radio guard. I remember that in the military. You're sitting there
Mhm.
for 4 or 5 hours just playing cards, listening to the radio with your buddy,
Yeah.
super
What
boring.
what did you do in the army? What was your job?
Infantry, nothing to do
Okay.
with cybersecurity.
You just blew shit up. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The other front line, now we have the digital front line, then
Yeah. Do
front
you know
line.
what a
Yeah.
megger is?
I've never
You're
heard that term.
a megger, it's like this thing you can create power with it. You crank this thing up. Well, we had something called the megger game, which I'll just leave it at that. It's called the megger game.
I've
It
seen
creates
those.
electricity. Yeah.
I've seen the cranks on some like old radio gear we had in the
Yeah.
comms room. Yeah,
Yeah. It's called a megger. But
wild.
good times. Good times.
There you go. There's a history of military stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, military. The funny thing about it, experiences vary significantly.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, wild. Um, cool. Yeah, I had some stuff written down, and I can't
Go
read my
ahead.
handwriting, but whatever. One of the things like I've heard like later on in my career in the military was something kind of similar to yours, where someone met some wise like E7 or something like that, and they're like, "Hey, you should start looking at finances early in your career. Like you just get out of boot camp, get in your first unit, and like, yeah, you should probably start putting into your TSP because it grows.
Hmm.
But a lot of people don't. A lot of people, probably were like me and you, where we didn't really think about it early on. And now, as you get older, like, okay, I should probably be taking this serious. Do you
Well,
find that still pretty common? Like, do you find that as you're talking to military folks?
in the enlisted side, yeah, there's a lack of financial education, I would say, in the enlisted side, and it might be getting better now because they shifted over to something called a blended retirement system where they're doing matching TSP and a pension. The pension's smaller now, whereas when we were in, they wanted you to do 20 so you could get a pension. That was like the financial advice.
Yeah.
And so they had a TSP, but they didn't match. And honestly, when I was like a junior enlisted, I didn't even really know what it was. Thrift savings plan, like what's that? Um, yeah, so like I didn't start participating in a TSP until I went to work for the government, and they had a TSP. But
Oh, interesting.
yeah, so I think maybe now because when you set up a TSP, if you don't know what you're doing, it will automatically elect the G fund, which is for those out there. Okay, real quick, there's five funds in the TSP: C, I, uh, S, F, and a G, and they're letter designators. All of them, except for the G fund, are just BlackRock index funds. Like the C fund is a BlackRock S&P fund. But and I is internationals, S is small cap, F is fixed income, so corporate bonds, and then you have the G, which is government bonds, which is like cash. So if you don't tell it, it's going to put just putting it into cash, and it's not going to grow. Um, and I learned that like when I first set up my TSP, luckily it was like early on, like 3 months in, I looked at like it's not growing. Like why is it just what I put in there? Like, oh, what's this G fund? Oh, okay. And I just kind of read the literature on what it was, and so I, you know, fixed it. Um, but I've met an '05 officer in the reserves who was retiring, and we sat down, and he had been putting money into his TSP, and he was a '05 in the reserves, and he was a government employee, and he had this TSP, and he's retiring, and it had like $200,000 in it, and this guy's like almost 60. I'm like, I was like, what's going on? And I realized he'd just been putting it in the G fund. He never changed it.
Yeesh.
So it was just his contributions. There was no gains, you know. So I felt bad for the guy. But yeah, so that's a long story of saying that no, yeah, there's still not a whole lot of, I'm not seeing a whole lot of like financial education on the enlisted. Now I deal mainly with Navy guys, um, just because that's who I knew and that's who kind of that's become my referral network. So I haven't really worked with a whole lot of Army. I started working with Submarines too recently, but maybe it's different in the Army and the Air Force, but that's not what I've been seeing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, my story with the TSP was I went to basic and my really good friend in basic training, his dad was an accountant, and then he said, "This is what my dad said to put it in." I said, "Okay," so I put it in what he
Yeah.
said to put it in, and I just left it there. Um, but yeah, I mean, financial education is something like there's not broad exposure to,
Yeah.
I think, just in general, which is why I've been hitting on it. I think this is the third podcast we've talked about finances in general. But it's such a really important topic for a lot of people. There's some crazy statistics. I should have pulled them up on here where a very low percentage of people, one, have $2,000 in savings, something like that, and then two, very few people actually have enough to retire when it comes time, which is sad, right? You get
Mhm.
older, you don't really have the ability to work like you used to. And there's a lot more medical bills, whatever. So it becomes a problem. It's really something you should be considering as early
Mhm.
as possible in life to prepare yourself for later on. You can't, I mean, you really
Yeah.
can't count on Social Security these days. That's always troublesome. But yeah, it's pretty wild. But yeah, that's why I pay attention. Like probably, I don't know how many years ago. It's probably like 3 or 4. I really started getting into fire. Have you heard a lot about that?
I've heard the name. We're not talking about the
Yeah.
Fire Festival, right? Something completely different. But
No, not. I think that's FYRE. No,
yeah,
FIRE.
the dumpster fire. But
Yeah.
Uh, no, tell me about it. I know very little about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a fairly kind of new mindset, but and there's just different flavors of it with everything, right? So it's just it stands for financial independence, retire early. So like when
Okay.
we were talking, I talked about retiring early
Hmm.
or intermittent retirement is kind of my plan. So, you can instead of waiting till you're 60 to go out and enjoy the world, you're still young, you can go enjoy it, but you can go back to work later. Uh, that's kind of my plan. But the idea is like you start saving early. You basically become financially aware. You start budgeting. You start controlling your money a little bit better. Like the big thing, like you see Dave Ramsey and all these people out there. It's like if you don't watch your money, it disappears, right? Um, but that's the idea. So you're preparing. Some people go super extreme where they're like riding a bicycle everywhere so they can save every penny. Um, but some people don't. Some people are a
Yeah.
little bit different. I think the first guy I had on that we were talking about fire, he's doing coast fire, which the idea is you save up what you would need to grow up. So, like if you saved $500,000 or $600,000, then you can stop saving, and it should get you to where you need in uh, 20 years or whatever. Like you don't have to save anymore. As long given that you have good projections
Yeah.
of what you need. That's always that's something you mentioned when we spoke too. But yeah, that's the general idea of it. So good financial planning, but a little bit more extreme than most people typically do.
Well, it's about just goal setting. There's only two things you really need to build wealth, and that's time and money. And the more time you have, the less money you need to build it. But obviously, if you have time and then you put the more money you put at it, the less time it takes to get to reach your wealth building goal. And there's a guy whose name escapes me, but he's like an influencer in the financial space, and he retired at like 35, and he had like $5 million. He did what you're talking about. He was just very austere. He rode his bike everywhere. Didn't take public transit. His big thing was not owning a car, and talked about how much money you spend on owning a car with insurance and maintenance and stuff like that. Of course, he lived in a city where he could take public transport and stuff like that. But yeah, the when you think about building wealth, what a lot of people don't recognize is, like I talked about earlier, is compounding returns. So, which is basically returns of returns. So, if let's say you're getting a 7% rate of return on $100,000, then in year one you're going to make $7,000. So, year two you now have 107. If you're still getting 7% rate of return, well, the next year it's not going to be 7,000. It's going to be 7,000 and change, whatever 7% what 107 is, and that adds to it. So now you get $115,000, and so 7% of that, and 7% of that, and so on and so forth. And if you can average a 7% rate of return over a 10-year period, your money will double. That's without you adding to it. So if you continue to make contributions on top of your returns, then it could be a 3 or 4x multiplier. And that's what that advisor told me when I was telling him my story about blowing through my SRB. But if you can put, I want to say about $100 a month into an IRA or any investment bucket, it doesn't matter. So when we talk about these accounts like an IRA or brokerage account, or which we call non-qualified accounts, or a Roth, all they are is an account where you can put whatever you want into it. You put stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, doesn't matter. And it can be the same thing. The difference, pros and cons from these accounts, an IRA, traditional IRA versus a Roth IRA versus a non-qualified account, is just really the tax treatment of the money. And so based on that, it's, you set them up for different goal projections. So with the IRA, you can't take the money out until you're 59 and a half. Otherwise, you'll pay penalties and pay taxes on it. But if you can wait that long, put it off, then you can either have tax-free returns if it's in a Roth, or you can tax defer the wealth if it's traditional. There's all these tax benefits. But if you can get, and I mentioned I said 7%, but if you can put, so back to my example, if you're putting $100 a month into, let's say, a Roth IRA, and you start at 20, so you do it for 40 years, you'll have about, if you can get a 10% rate of return, which is what the S&P has done for the past 40 years, you'll get you'll have $1.5 million when you're 60, right? That's just $100 a month with the compounding. So you can imagine if you max it out, which is 7,000, then it'll be probably 2x that, right? I haven't done that math yet, but the idea again. So it's early and often. Like fortunately for me, I learned my my mistake with the SRB. I did that when I was 21, and I learned the mistake when I was probably 27, and so that's about when I really started investing, and then really getting after it. And then my wife joined me. We both had matching 401ks with matches. She worked for Boeing, and they had a really good 401k. Then we opened up our own brokerage account. I learned about index funds. And I started putting money into that. And so yeah, so we're doing above and beyond. So we're just aggressively um, saving and investing. And so we have different buckets for different goals. So I mean, we probably could, I'm 48, I'll be 49. We probably could retire in 5 years. Our goal right now is 60. But when you think about whether it's early, the fire or intermittent retirement, you just want to start thinking about try to dial in as much as you can what your income need will be. So just start thinking about your lifestyle. So compare to what your lifestyle is today and project, okay, we'll have to be paying for college for a kid. We'll have to be paying for a mortgage on a house. So, okay, add those things together. Will I need to pay for my lifestyle? How much my lifestyle costs today? How much will it be then? And try to get an idea of what that number is going to be. So let's say it's $100,000. So see if you can generate $100,000 of passive income from your investment accounts. So because you're not going to get Social Security until you're at earliest is 63, I think is early Social Security, or 62. You can get early Social Security, but most people, I mean, start taking out like 65. But so by passive income, I mean like if you have, let's say, $1 million invested and you're getting a 7% rate of return, it means it's generating $70,000 in returns. You just take that out. So that becomes your income. So in theory, the million stays a million. So you're drawing out the returns. So, clearly, if you have $2 million saved, well, guess what? Now you can draw out $140,000. Again, assuming and I use 7% because it's a relatively conservative, doable rate of return that I use for estimating part. And it's easy math in my brain. Um, but clearly, yeah, obviously, it won't always be 7%, and in 2022, the large cap took an 18% dip because of the 8% inflation rate that year. Um, Whereas in 2023, it went up like 24%, right? So if you had that same million, you would, could take out, 200, almost $200,000 from in returns in that year. But the year before that, you wouldn't want to touch it. So that therein lies the rub, and what you and I were talking about during our session was down markets, is how to plan for those. Because if you're using your investments to live off of, you just gotta be wary of, because that taking the returns out every year from your nest egg, that will work just fine until there's a 2008 financial crisis. So um, a lot of having to realize losses can be diversified away, not just from owning a fund with multiple companies in it, but owning multiple funds in multiple different asset classes. Because even like in 2022, as you mentioned, U.S. large cap went down. Well, commodities went up that year. Commodities was 16%. So if you've got, a portion, if you look in your stock portfolio, I break it up into 8 different asset classes, and I usually put about 2% into commodities because commodities doesn't do great most years. But every once in a while, it'll pop, and if in cases like that, my clients are happy to have a little bit in commodities so they can continue to take distributions from their investment accounts without having to tap into their fixed income or their cash reserves or something like that. But if it all goes down, like a 2008, and unless you're, Michael Burry or somebody like that who can, plan for a credit default swap, then everything's gonna go down. The whole market goes down. So that's where it's, you can either have money in the bond market, so for fixed income, that's not going to go down, so you can pull money out of that, or have some other asset like it. And the strategy we talked about was using life insurance as a fixed bucket, and use it. It's a study that, or it's a strategy that Ernst& and Young wrote a study about, where you use cash value insurance as your fixed asset, in case of a down market. Um, and then allows you to go in as all equities on your investment side and your wealth portfolio, so it will grow better over time because you won't have the fixed income portion, dragging your gains behind. So that's another thing. But the whole idea is, um, when set your goal, whatever it is, like, okay, I want to retire, or let's start retiring at 45, at 50, whatever. Okay, how much income will I need at that time from my investments in order to meet that goal? So, okay, then reverse engineer, assuming a conservative rate of return to be able to create that passive income, how much wealth are you going to need in that bucket to generate that return? Um, and then that's about strategy and just, like you said, being aggressive, just dumping money into it. Or, you know, that, but I said, I have one client right now, who is a new graduate. She's like 23 years old, this female, just called me up, set a meeting. And I'm excited for her. She's maxing out her Roth IRA. She's contributing up to a match in her 401k. She just got a life insurance policy, and she is a cash value insurance policy. She's gonna be rich. The rate that she's going at when she started, it's not a matter of if, it's just when. It's just, so she'll probably be able to retire early. She probably will. 100%.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Hmm.
You definitely have to respect younger people, starting early and
Yeah.
getting their stuff straight. I do want to pause real quick and say
Shoot.
to just put this in the video that Tom is a financial advisor. He's really good at what he does, but he's not yours. So, like with anything medical, talk to yours,
Yeah.
because this is general advice, and you want to speak to an expert that has insight into what you're doing. But definitely feel free to reach out. I'm going to have all his
Yeah.
information in the podcast. But I just want to put that out there for for our risk
Yeah.
situation. Yeah, so put that statement out there. The other thing I wanted to talk about, yeah, the one thing I forgot to mention in the fire stuff, kind of the idea, right, is one, first you control your budget so you have some predictability, and then you do the multiply by 25, and the idea is you withdraw 7%, like you were talking about, withdrawal 7%. And so that's how people come up with their fire number. So you'll hear that term is whatever my expenses are going to be at the time of retirement. So you have to kind of make a guess, to some extent, right? Because the idea is to get rid of debt, so it's more predictable. And then you just monitor your food, all the other things you pay for, like if you do a vacation or whatnot, and then you multiply by 25 or a little bit more if you want a little bit more of a wiggle room, a buffer, and then yeah, 7% withdrawals. And I
Yeah.
think I forget which report, there's a big study that said I think technically you can pull out a little bit more, but 7% is a much more conservative number, or even 6% if you want to make sure it's more likely to last. Because isn't that the case, right? It's all about percentages. How likely is this to actually work out where you're not going to run out of money? That's the key, right?
Yeah. And I think well, I use 7% because, again, it's a conservative number. I'd rather plan for seven and be able to take 10 than the other way around. So, um, and it's funny, I was kind of chuckling because what FIRE basically is what I just call financial planning. Um, it's not that new. The 25 multiplier is a little nuancy, I guess, but um, it, to your earlier comment, the legal note you put out, that you always know a financial advisor is being honest with you if he leads his answer with "it depends." Um, so whatever you, and I'm talking to your audience, your goals are, and whatever your plan, whether it's the fire plan or something else, then it will depend on your goals. So if your goal is retire early, then what it sounds to me like the fire plan is, or the fire strategy is just financial planning toward retirement. It's just you're backing it up, and so you got to change. So you're talking about financial management, budget management, but monitoring your cash flow, being intentional about putting X number of dollars about, and then having a goal of now. To me, the difference is what we talked about, where you're putting the money. Because if you want to start pulling money out, especially earlier than 50, then you can't be putting all your money into retirement accounts because
Yeah.
then you'll have taxes and penalties. So it's just going back to the bucket concept of, okay, well, I need to take this bucket and that's going to be part of my retirement plan as well. Um, so yeah, uh,
Yeah,
sorry,
I
no,
mean,
over that.
no, no. Feel free to keep talking. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
like what's funny is as you were talking about that, I was thinking in my head, it was like how similar finances are to cybersecurity. Like it's
Hmm.
the answer is always it depends,
Yeah.
and you want to take a layered approach
Yes.
because it's all about managing risk. Both of them
Mhm.
are just about managing risk. One, risk that you're going to run out of money near the end, and versus risk of you're going to have a breach and it's going to be catastrophic to your organization. Um, so it's
Yeah.
yeah, risk and the layered approach, and that's exactly what they talk about in fire. Where like generally a lot of people look at 60 as a retirement age or something around there, right? It was 62 and a half or 63, whatever it is. Where people in fire they're talking about 35, 40 years old retiring,
Mhm.
which if I don't know what the average age is now, it's probably in the 70s, like mid 70s or something, right? I mean, you might know that. I don't know.
I honestly don't know.
But
I know like 67 is retirement age for Social Security. I know I'm going to retire at 60. But you can take out early Social Security as early as 62. So usually people gauge it around there. I mean, most people that I'm working with, in that realm are usually retiring somewhere around 65. Some people they get to that point and they don't want to retire. Like, oh, I want to keep working. And I recently had to kind of convince someone that look, you don't have to. Like, you actually can, because that's probably one of the hardest parts around. But my job is more the psychological aspect of it. And we all make these financial decisions on a spectrum between logic and emotion. On the logical side is the math and the numbers, and that's usually where I come in. The emotional side is what helps me sleep at night and feel good. And it's not that if you're more emotionally driven and that's how you make your decisions that you're devoid of logic. Oftentimes you're using a certain amount of logic to back up that emotional decision. Um, but it's just, and then my job is kind of meet you where you're at. But a lot of folks they get to 60, they started working in their 20s, they've been working for 40 years, and they've been focusing on saving and saving and saving. And or 35 or 40, wherever their goal is. I'm so I'm used to doing this. They don't realize like, oh, like I have enough. I can start spending what I've said, because now they got a reverse course. Whereas they were putting money into the account, now they got to start thinking about taking the money out. Like, oh, I want to stay there, and they've got legacy planning goals, and they want to leave something behind to the kids or whatever. And they have, um, but if you plan for all that, then it's time to execute. But then again, kind of breaking that um, mindset and realizing, oh, I'm rich now. Um, yeah.
well, it's also a lot of fear. Like you're talking about the
Mhm.
psychological. It's like, well, what happens if I stop and just only pull money? Will I have like? There's a lot of fear,
Mhm.
and I know with my financial planning, that's always a fear too. Like, am I going to have enough, even in bad times? And you were talking about layering so that you don't have to touch your stocks. And
Mhm.
sell and have a big tax penalty and sell at a downtime when you should really be holding on.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, psychological is a huge play. I know, um, like a lot of people have a knee jerk reaction to just save what's left, especially like in a down market, people just start selling, and it's like it's probably not the
Yeah.
best time to do that because they're really locking in those losses.
Yeah.
I know I've had some family do that with their retirement. They just they didn't sell, but well, I guess they would have sold and then moved it into another type of investment, but they lost so much money in the down market because of that knee jerk reaction due to psychological stress.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, it is scary.
Well, yeah, and I think that's where, again, like many times, I feel like more of a counselor than like an economist or financial person because um, I do so much on education, depending on the client. Some people are much more confident. Other folks need a little bit more education on, again, how wealth grows, but then just like how the markets work and the whole fear concept. You know, if you look back 100 years, going back to the 1920s, um, in 1 year increments, we've had positive markets 73% of the time. I want to say 73% of the time. In 5 year increments, about 87% of the time. And if you look at 15-year increments, it's been 100%. So if you have a 15-year time horizon or longer, based on history, you won't lose money unless there's some type of it would have to be really bad because you go back 100 years was 1925, right? So in that 100 years, we've had the Great Depression, which was much worse than the Great Recession, but we had the Great Recession too. We've had World War II. We've had Jimmy Carter hyperinflation years in the 1970s. We've had multiple recessions. The Gulf War, pandemic-ish, and then but here we are, right? And if you just again, going back just 40 years, the S&P 500 has averaged about 9.8% growth. Well, 40 years ago was the 1990s. We had the dot-com bubble burst. We had the 2008 financial crisis. We've had all these. We had the COVID crash in 2020. We've had the 2022 down markets, and yet average annual year over year, that one sector has grown 9.8% average, right? So it's just, kind of understanding that part of it. And to your point, the fear, like, will I have enough? Can I take money out? And so that's, to me, that's where what I do as a planner matters as much, if not more, than what I do as the wealth management part. The wealth management part to me is easier because it's just math and numbers and there's research, but it's much more of a science to it. Whereas the planning is more of if there's an art form, that would be the art form to it of being able to, but also again, like the psychological part. And people are so different. Everyone makes, people are so different in how they make decisions. And I've had sessions, and oftentimes I'll open up my portfolio and I'll just log into my accounts and say, this is what I'm doing. And because a lot of folks are like, well, what do the smart guys do? Like, this is what I'm doing. This is where I'm at. This is how much, wealth I have. This is the accounts I'm doing. So, and they're like, oh, I want to do what you're doing. Like, okay, deal. And I show them. And of course, as a fiduciary, I gotta make sure that's in their best interest. And then many times, sometimes I've had this experience recently, like in the past, like a few months ago, where the guy's like, I showed him the strategy, said, I'm doing the same strategy. This is what I'm doing. He's like, I want to do that. And then we came to make the decision, and I've noticed a couple of people, I've defined a new term, FOMO, but not fear of missing out, fear of moving out. Like the army, all right, move out. We're gonna take this hill. Move out. The idea of executing. It's time to execute. And a lot of times people have that fear of making a decision. This is where the emotional side comes in. And so I'll say, okay, it's time to put in, this is the portfolio design we decided on. This is the insurance policy we decided on. This is the plan we decided on. And like, yeah, this is too aggressive. I don't want to do that. I'd rather do this more conservative portfolio, and I'd rather do this over here. They'll make changes, and I'll say, okay, it's your money, but as your advisor, I got to tell you, you want it to be. This was your goal. This is what you got to do in order to get there. You can see what I did. So here's a test case to show you that it worked. And yeah, it's just too aggressive. I'm like, okay, you're not going to get here. I'm are you okay with that? And then like, yeah, that's fine. Okay. You know, um, and it's just those conversations are always interesting. But just the way I sleep at night myself, I got to make sure that I'm doing best by my clients is knowing that I'm going to be talking to these people throughout the year. I've my goal in life when I meet with anybody is to establish a long-term relationship with them. It's not to sell them a self-looking ice cream cone or a solution trying to find a problem. It's like, how can I work with you and get to know you? And 6 months, a year from now, maybe they'll realize, okay, let's do that strategy you were talking about. I'm ready to move on that now. Okay. And 'cause for what I do, relationships will are more important than strategies. There's many times I've lost business. I've been in competition with another advisor, and he gets the business, even though my strategy is better, but because he's, the son-in-law, or something like that. Now I'm gonna give the business to my son-in-law, who's 23 and just graduated from college. Like,
Yeah. Or they told them something they just wanted to hear, so they went
yeah,
for them.
yeah. Usually it's not so much that. It's usually, like I said, it's the relationship.
Yeah.
You know, my family member or my college friend or whatever, and I want to give them the business. I trust them or something like that. And so it's that they don't trust me, but they have that relationship. So that's one of my goals when I meet with people is to, particularly if it's somebody new, that a referral is to try to first to kind of establish that rapport and get to know people, and it makes me a better advisor because then I can really know if what they're telling me is they're telling me what they think I want to hear, versus I had to because sometimes I might need to push them a little bit and kind of hit them in the feels. They're too far on the logical side of the spectrum, and I'm like, all right, like I've had this conversation actually happen once where I'm recommending life insurance to a dude and how much insurance he needed, and he's like, my wife's hot, she can get remarried, and I was like,
That's what
dude,
he said.
yeah. And so I had to lay it on him. I'm like, bro, I mean, imagine your wife and your children, and they're at your casket, at your wake, and your wife's got to walk out and go get a job. Or she's got to go marry some schlub because now she needs, someone to help her because she hasn't worked or whatever. And it's like, oh yeah, you're right. Yeah. Like, be a man, get some life insurance, for crying out loud. We're talking about life insurance. It's not I'm not telling you to put $100,000 into an investment account. This is easy stuff. But yeah.
That's hilarious. I'm sure you have some interesting conversations with people.
Hmm.
One of the things I did look up a second ago, and I meant to mention, yeah, I did say that, right? I meant to mention was, so the average life expectancy in the U.S. as of 2023 is 78. So if you
Okay.
retire in your early 60s, you not quite 20 years, but that's about it. For fire people, you're looking at almost triple that. So
Yeah.
that's where the game's a little bit different, but yeah, it's just like you were saying, it depends about your goals, right? You have to have a lot more money and be a lot better with your finances if you're looking at a 60-year roadmap versus a 20-year roadmap. It's a little bit different.
100%. I mean, one of the questions I ask people when we're setting up their investment accounts, I have to get their risk tolerance, and there's these I ask them a set of 11 questions to understand their risk profile. And one of them is how long, and I'm usually asking about the specific pot of money. Um, like, how long do you want it to last? And when do you plan on retiring? When do you plan on start taking distributions from it? And then how long do you want it to last? And so it's kind of a morbid question. It's like, how long do you plan to live? Right. Um, but I plan for, generally speaking, cause you never know, but I always plan for 92 for men and 95 for women. Women tend to
Really?
outlive men. Yeah. Because I'd rather plan for that long. If they die at 78, okay, you know. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, there's kind of just, yeah, I got to come up with an age. Like, I
Yeah.
have no
Well, I
crystal
mean, you
ball.
want a little bit more runway anyway, so
Yeah,
better to have 2 extra years versus 2 less years worth of money.
yeah.
Be
Oh,
crappy to be.
I've had people disagree with me though. They're like, no, man, if I live past 80, I'll be lucky. It's like,
I mean,
okay,
that's how I feel, but
yeah. Yeah. I mean,
still,
I look at
still
it,
plenty.
my grandmother, my dad's mom lived to be 100, my mom's mom lived to be 96, 93 or 94. Her husband was 92. My youngest grandfather at death was 87, and he smoked 2 packs of menthols a day, drank half a bottle of whiskey a day, and he lived to be 87. I work out 5 days a week. I run all the time. I eat very healthy. I'm not going to die, probably, given my genetics. So I live to be 150 years old. So I got a plan for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, my granddad was the same. He passed, I think, in his 86, 87. Smoked unfiltered cigarettes every, like, multiple packs a day, like, ridiculous. And,
Hmm.
lung cancer finally got him. But, like, come on, Coca
Yeah.
Cola's all the time.
Yeah. That
But,
was a
yeah, you
that was a
never know.
Mad Men generation. And my grandfather, he was in World War II. He was part of that whole Mad Men generation where they smoked and drank all the time. You know.
Yeah. Back when cigarettes came in the MRE, or not MREs, but the
Oh
meals,
yeah, yeah,
rations. There we go.
yeah,
That's what they
yeah.
called them.
Tobacco rations. Yeah, they rationed cigarettes here in the U.S. during World War II to send them overseas to the guys fighting. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they deserve
Okay.
to smoke
They
during all
deserved it.
that.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
remember we had some
100%.
guys that would do that after like a heavy engagement. They'd
Hmm.
just be sitting there smoking by the trucks, like,
When I was in
yeah, I feel you.
Afghanistan, we had a cigar club, the Taliban Cigar Aficionados Club, TCAC. I mean, yeah, it's
That's
cool.
amazing.
Yeah, it was cool. I have stickers and we had T-shirts and everything like that. And I don't have my member card, but I have a little membership card.
You had a
Yeah.
little membership card. That's
Oh,
amazing.
yeah,
I
I have a certificate and everything. Yeah.
I started smoking a pipe, tobacco pipe, my second deployment, and so we'd have cigars and smoke a tobacco pipe whenever came back from missions, just sitting on the porch, like, all right,
Did you just want to be a little extra classy? Just have
yeah,
that pipe?
I was
Yeah.
super classy my second year in Afghanistan. It was great.
Yeah, do something different. When were you in Afghanistan? What year were you there?
I was there 9, 10, and then 11, 12.
Okay. Yeah, well, we missed. Yeah, I was there. Didn't get there till 17. So after that,
Ah,
I'm trying to. Where were you stationed? What part of Afghanistan?
yeah. So the first time was the big push outside of Kandahar when they had
Okay.
the big Taliban push, and I
Yeah.
was right outside of in the Arghandab River Valley. So a good time,
Yeah,
really good
yeah.
time. Yeah, and then the second year was over in Kabul. There's a little bit of action there, not as bad as Arghandab was, but
Yeah.
a little something, something,
Yeah,
not bad.
I was in Kabul.
Oh, okay, so
There.
we were in the same area. Well, it was
Yeah.
pretty toned down by the time you got there, though, right?
Yeah, mainly suicide bombs. We had a few of those, some IDFs and stuff like that. Most of the fighting was like up in the north. Um, they had a fighting season by that time, like
Yeah.
during the winter, Taliban. We had HQN at that point, Haqqani Network. They were kind of like a new version of Al Qaeda, I think. The leader of the Taliban's daughter married the son of HQN, so they became like that. That was part of the other time. And then they had ISIS starting to come in at that time, ISIS K, ISIS in Iraq. There was a hodgepodge. It was like, and then you had the Chinese, they were messing around, so were the Russians. They were, yeah.
Do you have Chechnyans? We had some of those as well.
I don't remember Chechens. I remember that the Chinese, they were doing a lot of stuff on the cyber side. They were causing
Oh, interesting. Yeah, we didn't
problems. Yeah,
even didn't even
yeah,
consider cyber stuff when I was there, but
yeah,
yeah, we just worried about the guns.
yeah.
I mean, we didn't even have computers working most of the time.
we,
Like it was nuts. My first one was insane. It was just basically took a schoolhouse, put HESCO barriers around it. So these are just containers with dirt in them.
yeah.
And that's where we lived for a year, almost a year, anyways. And no bathrooms. We just had literally took a schoolhouse chair, took the wooden frame out of it, and put plywood around it. That was our bathroom for
Yeah,
for quite some time. It's a good time.
good time. Yeah, we had. I mean, by the time I got there, we were in the train and advise mode. So originally,
Yeah.
it was train, advise, and assist was the mission. They took out the assist and it was train and advise. They had probably like 200 trigger pulling troops on the ground, mostly special forces guys. And then during the fighting season, they sent in a special brigade called the SFAB, Security Force Assistance Brigade, and it's just some army, fighters, and they go in and help the Kandaks do their job. But most of us were going to train and advise, and so because we were trying to turn everything over to the Afghans,
Right.
And so, but the things that we did, the heavy lifting that the either I was on the NATO side, but the U.S. as well. The U.S. did all the air support. All air support was U.S. And then NATO, we did a lot of the comps. So and ISR stuff. We had a lot of ISR stuff going on, and we had all the communicate. So we would give them like whenever they go do on mission, we put together this deployable CIS package for NATO CIS stuff because it was a NATO mission. Um,
Mhm.
and so that was my job. I was in plans and projects on the CJ6 side. So I was put together those packages. I got to fly around a lot. That was fun because whenever we were moving people and if we had to set up a new camp, I'd have to go and do the. I could send somebody else to go do it because I was the section chief, but I like to do it. So I was like, I'll go.
I
Yep.
hated flying, but I'd rather do that than drive over
Yeah,
there.
yeah. I only drove. I only really drove once. One time.
Really?
Yeah, we went to. Yeah, we were flying everywhere. We flew. There's Blackhawks and Chinooks. Just we had contractor Chinooks there. Just it was. Yeah, we flew. There was a because I was in the RS.
Were your Chinooks those raggedy? They look like they were someone from backwoods Russia. Like those were some of the ones I rode on.
You like the white ones with the orange?
I
It was
think
like
they
the
just look raggedy. Look like they were going to fall apart in the air.
we
So
had
sketchy.
the U.S. ones. They had the normal Army green Chinooks, and then we
Hmm.
had the '60s, the Blackhawks, um, and then they had some contractor Chinooks that were white with orange on them, and then they had some contractor Hueys, like old school, like Hueys. But we took Blackhawks most of the time. But there was like in Kabul because they tried to. The whole idea was to shut down after 2014. They wanted to shut down and get out. Um, but then they started ramping. So they closed all these bases, these camps, and then they started ramping back up. By the time I got there, and we were kind of overflowing the spaces that we had. So we were in the process of actually growing, but we had so the mission had changed from ISAF to which is International Security Assistance Force to RS, Resolute Support, and that's where we shifted over to train and advise from the war fighting to the train and advise, trying to make the Afghans do stuff. So RS headquarters, which is where I worked at, that was in Kabul, and then um, they had HKIA, which was also part of Kabul, over the airport, Hamid Karzai Airport, and then they had this thing, this NKC, New Kabul Compound, which is basically just they needed some extra space. It carved out like a square. Um, the first time this is funny. The first time I flew, because remember I'm a Navy submariner, right? So the first time I flew in a military helicopter was when I ingressed into Afghanistan. I flew in uh, I think it was I can't remember. It was what it was a an Air Force not a Galaxy but the Globemaster whatever that is C-17 that's what it was a C-17 from Qatar into Bagram and then they flew us in a Chinook over into Kabul. So and I think I'm like this is amazing. This is so much fun. I get to fly around in helicopters and carry a rifle. I'm like oh I feel like I'm a Navy SEAL or something. And so I flew into Kabul, and like the next day, like, hey, we need to go over to NKC. They wanted to just take me around to different camps, and so I could see everything. So we got to go to NKC. It's like great. We took this old soccer field and turned it into our helicopter landing zone, and it's on the back side of the RS headquarters camp. So you go over there, and you got to get there like an hour ahead of time, put your name on the list. So at the PAX loading station, so do that. So I'm waiting there for like an hour, and we got our full kit on, full battle rattle, everything, because you had to do that in order to fly. So we wait, the Black Hawk lands, we get on the helicopter. We've been, we planned the day before. We've been waiting an hour. We get on the Black Hawk, and it literally does this. It was maybe 30 seconds, a minute max in the air, and I thought something went wrong. Like it's like no, we're here. Like the camp there was because there was a green zone and our the blast wall bordered the green zone, and so there was a street, a civilian road, and then there was the next camp. So we couldn't like physically walk there or drive there. We had to fly there, but you're just like flying over over a wall. That was it. I could probably throw a
Interesting.
football from RSHQ into NKC, but they made us sit there and wait an hour for what ended up being like a 60-second flight. I thought something had failed, like, oh, the helicopter is failing, we have to emergency land or something like that. Like, nope, we're here. Like, that's it.
That's wild.
I'm like, oh, okay.
I wish I had
Um,
that life. We'd be walking for, several times 20 miles down the road
oh yeah,
with
no, we
everything.
didn't.
Yeah.
The only time I drove is we were going to. There was an old camp that had been shut down, and they're looking at reopening it again. And we went to go evaluate it with a German, not a German, an Italian two-star general. And we got to drive with his security forces, which was awesome. So they had all these up-armored SUVs, and we started driving through the streets of Kabul. And these Italian security forces, they drove it like it was the Autobahn. It was awesome. And so I'm sitting in the back of this. The back seat was basically a forerunner, and it's all up armored, forerunner. And they were just flying, and they were like boxing
Jeez.
people out and doing all this offensive driving. It was great. It was awesome. Loved it.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, the Chinooks are the ones with the big helicopters with the two blades on it.
Yeah.
So you'll see them in a lot of movies and stuff. Fun fact for me, the first helicopter I went up in was a Chinook, but I didn't land in it. So that was when I went to 82nd Airborne, that was the first thing I jumped out of was a Chinook.
There you go.
Yeah, I just always remember it felt like walking the plane because it's like noisy, noisy, noisy. These things are insanely noisy, and they just lower the tailgate because it's a little bit different than jumping out of C-130 or C-17, where those you kind of go out of the door, you have the prop blast, open up your parachute, so it takes about 3 or 4 seconds. It's open, you're good. Chinook, they lower the ramp. You even hold the cord down instead of up like this, and you walk you walk to the ramp and then you do like a 45-degree turn, walk like diagonal down the ramp, and then you just jump off. And it's like walking the plane because it's like loud, 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 no noise, but you're falling for a really long time.
Yeah.
And your parachute, you don't even feel it open up when you jump out of these helicopters. It's just so gradual.
Yeah.
Where on the plane, it's like it jerks you. It's like gives you a little whiplash. But
Yeah.
don't want to do that again, so I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah. The first helicopter I flew in was a Seahawk. On a, I was
Mm.
flying from. I was on an amphibious readiness group on a surface ship. I was there. I was riding them to give them training, and I got to fly from one ship to the next. And I flew in a Seahawk. So same thing as the Black Hawk, but it's silver in color.
Yeah, I don't miss those. What's funny is if you ever meet my dad, I think he'll be back down this way in a couple of months, so he might
Mhm.
pop over at Tech Eat or something. He used to be a helicopter pilot in the Army.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so he's pretty mad when I told him I was going to be in the infantry. What are you going
Yeah,
to do?
I try to get my girls. I even mentioned I have a 14 and a 9-year-old. I mentioned military. It's like, yeah, you could go in the Navy. Like they like girls in submarines now. You could be a submariner like dad. And she's like, no. Both of them like not happening. So it's fine with
Yeah,
me.
submarines are tough. I mean, that's a tough job in general to do, but also very competitive, right?
It is. It is. Yeah. So yeah, you got to test into it, and there's psychological evaluations to make sure you're just crazy enough to be trapped in a steel tube with a bunch of other dudes. So yeah, but yeah, it's considered more elite, and then they have like the nuclear power guys. That's more
Oh, the nukes. Yeah.
yeah, the nukes. That has a pretty high academic rigor to get into that. So it's
Yeah, such a
hardcore.
huge dropout rate. It's like worse than special forces, I think.
It's right up there with them, I think, probably similar dropout rate, but yeah, different reasons, but yeah.
Yeah. Crazy stuff.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, let's go back to finances. I mean, it's a great
Okay,
conversation.
100%.
Yeah. I mean, I always enjoy talking about military stuff and
Yeah.
comparing whatnot. So I guess we'll talk about, a couple more topics and I'll let you go. I know it's kind of late. We're filming. It's 7:42. We both want to get back to families and stuff. But um, one, what are you seeing like people do that help them get to what others consider wealthy and keep that as a question? And then two, what are some of the most common mistakes people are making besides kind of the ones you had already mentioned where they're just not planning well or kind of letting psychology get in the way or whatnot? But yeah, I mean, have at those two questions and maybe we can give some good advice to listeners.
Yeah, those are great questions. So, in terms of like the most common mistakes are a lack of action,
Okay.
just not doing anything. To your point, we meet so many people that just haven't saved, that haven't done anything, um, and a lot of that has to do just with a lack of understanding, um, and or do the ostrich mentality, put their head in the sand and think it'll be okay or something like that, or I'll deal with that later. I have to think that the average person just knows in their mind that they should be doing this, but they're just like, get out of my ear. I'll do that later. This is so much more fun. Um, so yeah, and like I said, the FOMO, fear of moving out, just fear of making a decision. You know, the worst thing that you can do financial wise is nothing. Um, yeah, even if you do like what I did and you made a mistake, you can learn from that mistake. Um, uh, like and we've all made. I got into a um, real estate investment club many years ago. It was a syndication. Um, Lost money in it, right? But for the few years I was in it, it provided a tax deduction for me because K1 shows losses and stuff. Um, and I kind of learned about real estate investment, so there was some learning there, and I learned what not to do, right? So you learn a lot from your mistakes. Um, but yeah, I think the most common mistakes I see are just the inaction, the waiting or just the not doing. And then I'm sorry, what was your first question?
Yeah, well, I'll ask you another question real quick to fill
Okay, go
in
ahead.
some
Yeah,
gaps. Then I'll ask that question.
yeah. Okay.
So, one of the things I like to think is that a big, well, first, have you ever heard of the marshmallow test?
Yes, but refresh me.
So it's basically where they put a marshmallow in front of a bunch of kids and they say, if you don't touch this one, we'll give you like three or four or whatever it is later, like in 15
Right.
minutes
Yeah.
or 5 minutes. And then you have like a large percentage of them that eat it or they're like licking it, doing whatever not to do it. But they found that like people who can resist have much better like
Hmm.
um, ability to wait for long term um, stuff. What is it called? What's the word? It's late. I'm looking for.
Like long-term reward or
Yeah, there's a word I'm looking for there, but I can't think of it. But yeah, basically can wait
Mhm.
long term for something for their
Right.
reward. Where those who aren't very good at it. Do you think that's the case with a lot of this stuff where they're thinking more short term, like I want that boat, I want that car, I want whatever, that vacation, Disney. Someone was telling me they spend a bunch of money on Disney every year with their family.
Yeah.
Do you think that's the case? Like, is that applicable here?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. That is 100% applicable here. Or people think, oh, I'll have time. There's always time.
Yeah.
And some of it, you can chalk up to ignorance or lack of understanding. Like I mentioned about understanding how compounding interest works. Again, fortunately for me, I learned that lesson early. So then I had again time plus money to recover and to do it right. Uh, but yeah, that absolutely is applicable. Where the instant gratification, I think the word you're looking for, right? Instant gratification versus delayed gratification, or is
Yeah,
is
that's it. That's it.
yeah, it definitely factors in with a lot of people. I've had people where I lay it all out and they'll look at it and they'll say that makes absolute sense. I just don't want to do it. Like, okay, like what can I got nothing.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you don't want to do it. That's fine. It's your life. I'm the advisor. You're the decider. Um,
It's
100%.
was it Warren Buffett that said compound interest was like the eighth wonder of the world or something like that?
Yeah. I quote Warren Buffett a lot. He also said like nowadays all you need is a basket of ETFs. And that's basically that's a lot of what my portfolios are. I love ETFs nowadays. Big fan of ETFs. He also said don't the rule number one is don't lose money. That's great.
Rule number
Gold.
two, refer back to rule number one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Second question that I have before I get
Mm.
to the other question I actually originally asked.
Okay.
So one of my favorite books that I have read. So I've read a ton of books on just finances in general.
Mm.
But one of my favorite, especially for people starting out and who don't want something that's super technical, is one called The Simple Path to Wealth.
Okay.
Have you heard of that one?
I've heard of it. Yeah, I haven't read it.
Yeah, fantastic. And I actually told my daughter if she reads it, I'll give her money for like every chapter she reads.
Yeah.
Because the author originally wrote it for his daughter going to college. So it's all built off of like his tips for his daughter so she can find financial freedom. So it's kind of like a
Mhm.
staple in the fire community. But I say that to say, is there anything that you would recommend people read so they can start educating themselves?
Yes. Um, so if you want to educate yourself on, um, it's a really good book and it's sitting over there on my shelf. I can't remember the name of it.
Go look. Go, go,
All
go.
right,
You can do
hold on. I'll be right back.
it.
Right back. Ah,
I need to start bringing my books in here. I'm trying to build up my bookshelf in the background here with stuff that I
yeah,
think people should read.
there's a couple. Okay. All right. There's a couple. Uh, this one, The Psychology of Money.
Ooh,
So
that's in my reading. That's in my cart right now, actually.
this is a good one. Another one, which I don't have in here, um, it's on my bedside, The Intelligent Investor by
That's a
Ben Graham.
classic.
Yeah,
That's a
it was.
classic. Yeah.
So speaking of Warren Buffett, so he was interviewed a couple years ago by Andy Serwer on Yahoo Finance, which by the way is my favorite financial website to go to. Yahoo Finance, love it. Um,
What
and
was
he
the
was
name of the website?
Yahoo Finance, just Yahoo
Oh, wow.
Finance. Yeah. hmm You've got a ton of information, easy to navigate, and it's free. There's a paid version of it, but you just use the free version. It's great. Um, but yeah, it was asking Warren Buffett about the value of education nowadays. A lot of people have been talking about that. Charlie Kirk, rest his soul, like poo-pooed education. It's a waste of money. Warren Buffett kind of agreed. He said, Andy Sorrell asked him, he's like, did you benefit by going to college? And he went to Columbia University. And he said, no. He said, not really. He said, his value was inspiration more than education because he was taught by Ben Graham. Ben Graham was a professor at Columbia.
I was about to say, yeah, I was pretty sure he worked for the author of the book,
Yeah.
or
So
studied
yeah,
under him, anyways.
he got to study under him, and so he got to learn from the guy who wrote the book. But he said all you got to do is read Ben Graham's book, and that's all you need to know about value investing. And so the latest version that Ben wrote went up until like the 1970s, like 73, 74. And so there's a lot of reference to the inflation, and they were going through a recession at that time. Another, I want to say it was like a journalist, basically updated it as of like 2003. So there's some like footnotes. They talk about ETFs and they talk about the dot-com bubble and stuff like that. And then there's a forward by Warren Buffett in it. So I highly recommend that one. Um, then there's like some non-financially related things, but like Atomic Habits is a great
That's
book.
a good one. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I gotta lift up the Holy Bible. I'm a big fan. It's seriously for just life in general. Um, it's I read that every day. And then I would say, for if you're going into, um, there's a couple other kind of specific books. Like, oh, there's this one. What would the Rockefellers do?
hmm I just
This
added
is
after our conversation. I added that to my cart.
Yeah. So this one is again more specific around generational wealth. So J.D. Rockefeller is the wealthiest American in history. Um, Adjusted for inflation, he has about 2x the amount of wealth that Elon Musk has today. Um,
Oof.
and he was at a time this titans of industry. Between him, there was Cornelius Vanderbilt, um, uh, J.P. Morgan. There's a few other ones out there, Carnegie, these super wealthy guys. And him and Vanderbilt were like one and two. And Vanderbilt was uh, pretty. I mean, he still had more money than Musk as well. But by Vanderbilt's third generation, pretty much all their wealth had been spent because Vanderbilt left most of his wealth to his oldest son. He was in charge of his business. His son had like 10 or 11 children, and he split the wealth between the children, and they just kind of spent it. Um, Biltmore up in North Carolina was built by George Vanderbilt, who was Cornelius Vanderbilt's grandson. And But J.D. Rockefeller, he had a bunch of children and grandchildren and great grandchildren, and he got cash value life insurance, like whole life, universal life insurance on all of his descendants, created this massive trust that owned the policies, and created the first family office. People have heard of the family office today. Well, that was the first one. So he had this team of financial advisors, and he the created this philanthropic trust, and so no one could really profit from the wealth. They had to work for the foundation or whatever. And whenever they needed money, they would borrow money out of these whole life policies, these cash value policies, and then they would put the money back, and they would get policies on adults and all the way down to children, like little babies. And so if you get like I got whole life on my daughter and both my daughters, and you put $200 a month into a life insurance policy on a 2-day old baby, by the time they're 90, now there's like millions of dollars in this policy that you could leverage throughout their life. And then when they die, the death benefit goes back into the trust, and then wash, rinse, repeat. So this trust is still going on today. It's still around. There's billions of dollars in it. And if J.D. Rockefeller were alive today, he'd still be one of the wealthiest men in America. So it's a story of generational wealth. Um, Again, not really general financial information, but an interesting book to read. Um, yeah, it's kind of like I was thinking about this concept the other day of have you heard of the 5 foot shelf by Elliot's 5 foot shelf? Heard of that? So back in around 1900, on the turn of the 20th century, the either the dean, I think, or the president of Oxford University was talking about the value of a liberal education, liberal being, Western civilization liberal, and not liberal in the political sense. He said, um, he was talking about the value of an education like at Oxford or Harvard or something like that. He said the value is really just more in like the network and again, kind of like inspiration. And this is interesting. This is 125 years ago. And he basically said the same thing that Warren Buffett said. And he said, all the information you need to have a classic liberal education, you can find in he said, initially he said it's a 3 foot shelf, meaning like there's a 3 foot shelf of books. If you read these books, that's all you need to know. And he was kind of shooting his mouth off. And so the press pushed him on it. Like, okay, smart guy, what's in your 3 foot shelf? And, uh, and he was speaking hyperbolically. But then finally he said, all right, no, it's not a 3 foot, it's more like a 5 foot shelf. I said, okay, fine. Okay, what's in your 5 foot shelf? So he put out this list of books. This classic literature like, Oedipus Rex and Shakespeare and this set of books. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's like a 5 foot shelf of books. And if you read these books, that's what you need to know for a classic education, studying the classics. I was thinking about doing the same thing. Like, what's the 3 foot shelf for financial advisors? What book, if you're a financial professional, what books? Because like for us, there's other books of how to be a financial advisor. Well, there's a book by a guy named Nick Murray called The Game of Numbers, which talks about how to build a wealth management practice and how to be a good financial advisor. Um, there's a lot of good quotes in there about that, but it's more about, again, kind of being a fiduciary and managing other people's wealth versus like building your own wealth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so now you got me thinking. There's probably some other books out there I'm leaving out.
Well, if you can think of any more, send them to me, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna include all these books in the description so people can get to them. I'm a big believer in reading. I have where I need to read at least a book a month, but I try to do at least two. Um, and you just never like I learn so much. I get a lot of inspiration from reading, a lot of ideas. I'm
Yeah.
a idea kind of guy.
Yeah.
Gets the wheel spinning. It's good for you. And I'm out there running usually. I do a lot of Audible because I'm gearing up for my ultra, so I spend
Okay.
hours running.
Yeah.
So I just throw it in there and go. And of course, all the creative energies are moving along as I'm moving and listening because I have nothing else to do because my body's doing all the work.
I had a really good Audible book, not financially related. It's called Winning the War in Your Mind. It's
Mm.
by Craig Groeschel. And he talks about how we tell ourselves lies over and over again in our mind. We kind of start believing the same lie. A lie repeated enough times you'll begin to believe it as though it's true.
Hmm.
Like I'm not good enough, or I'll never be successful, or this business won't grow, or whatever. And he compares that to, he says that's like a trench. If you're driving your car down a road and there's a trench, you keep, no, he said that, I'm sorry, back there, that's a rut. You're falling into a rut. A rut is like, like the ruts in a road, in a dirt, muddy road, you keep falling into that same rut over and over again. And he said you need to get yourself out of those mental ruts. And he said dig a trench of truth. The trench is intentional. You dig it to move water or to do something intentional. So then you have to start telling yourself the same truth over and over again of, I am good enough. I am going to be successful. I am going to pass this test or finish my ultra marathon or whatever. So it's a good book to read to kind of, if you find yourself going into those same ruts over and over again in life or whatever they are, the mental ruts. It's a good one to kind of, and there's an accompanying workbook that goes with it. Um, but I have it on Audible. I can send it to you. You can
Yes,
listen to my
send it
Audible.
over. Yeah, I mean,
It's a good
uh,
one.
affirmations. I'm a big believer just in
Hmm.
in that thing. Talking about where you want to be, and eventually it kind of sets your. You start kind of your thinking starts transforming to be that thing that you're affirming. And I mean, I think of it as a cheat code to get where you want to be faster because
Yeah.
a lot of life is just a mental game. Like you're talking like all the self doubt and whatnot, and it kind of really gets in the way of you doing stuff. But when you start thinking the way your in state is going to be, you get there better. Like you're already there. Like,
Yeah.
Michael Phelps is a big one with visualization. A lot of Olympic athletes actually too. They visualize their race before they run it, and then
Yeah.
their body just does the work. They've already been there, and it's just completing the story that they already know is to be true. There's a
Yeah.
lot of cool
My
stuff.
my wife's reading a book right now that she's testing on me. I'm her guinea pig. Called The Power of the Subconscious Mind, where it's like, and I'd have to ask her how she does it. But basically, you kind of tell yourself something before you go to bed at night. You repeat it like 7 times. Like if your goal is to, you know, I want to bring on 10 new clients by the end of this month. You just say that over and over and over again. And so to start putting it into your subconscious. And so then you kind of believe like it's going to happen and you can manifest it. Um,
Hmm.
so I'll try it out and let you know how that works for me.
Yeah,
But
tell
it's
me
a good
how it
book.
goes.
Yeah.
One last book I want to mention, then I'm gonna kick the ball to you to
Okay.
talk about whatever you want to talk about for a few minutes before you hop off. The Snowball. It's a biography on Warren Buffett. A huge
Okay.
book, by the way, but it's a it's a really cool story to learn.
Hmm.
We all hear these stories about Warren Buffett. This is his life story. Very cool read. I read it when I was in the military, actually. But really cool. I'll put that one in the links. But
Okay.
just want to mention that because we keep mentioning his name.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a good read on it. So yeah, take some time. Talk about whatever you want to talk about. You want to talk about what you're doing in business, how people can get in touch with you. Any of that? Floor is yours.
Yeah. What should we be doing in business? That's a great question. So right now, I mean, AI is the big buzzword. Everyone's talking about AI and how AI is being
Oh no,
implemented.
your business, like how
Oh,
people
my
like
business. Okay.
this is like
Oh, okay.
your
Self-promotion.
ad at this.
You're
Yeah,
asking me to
this is
promote
self
myself.
promotion time.
Oh
Yeah,
man,
yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm not good at that. So yeah, I'm in the. I have my practice, like I mentioned in the beginning, at Northwestern Mutual. I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram and all the stuff like that. You can find me on LinkedIn. Um, and I have a website, just, thomasperez.nm.com is my website. And there's a button on there, click to book a meeting with me or get on my waiting list. Um, but yeah, so I'm a financial architect. I focus um, a lot on small business owners. So I'm really good. I got really smart early on how to tax shelter wealth, particularly for small, 10 or under employee businesses. The solopreneurs are kind of my sweet spot. Um, and I kind of did that by accident. Like the first people I called on was my um, cousin's husband, who owns an IT company down in Alabama. And I joke, I call him like the redneck Zuckerberg, because he did what Zuckerberg did. He started this company in college, and he dropped out of college, never finished, and then started this IT company down in Mobile, Alabama, and he's grown it and grown it. He's got multiple LLCs under this one S corp, and he works a lot in the maritime space. Very successful guy, doing great. And at a meeting like in my first year work, and he had a good problem. He had made a bunch of money, had like $600,000 left in his S corp that was gonna fall on his K1, and he was gonna pay income tax on that he didn't really need. And so that's why I got smart on how to do tax sheltering and using qualified plans for that kind of thing, and something called a cash balance plan. And I got smart on using life insurance. So that's kind of what I do really well. And also, like I said, just working with families and individuals just to grow wealth, take care of your family. When I think about a business owner, there's like three circles that kind of overlap with you, the business owner, in the middle. You got your family or your personal plan, you got your business plan, and then you also have your estate plan and uh, what you want your legacy to be when you're gone, and you're kind of in the middle. So that's where I focus on kind of bringing those three together into one cohesive, comprehensive plan, and then helping you execute it. I like to make sure that dreams don't die with the dreamer. Uh, but yeah, and yeah, so I'm in Charleston, South Carolina, heavily involved in my church, and I have two girls, Ava, who's a freshman at Wando, Juliana, who's in fourth grade, and of course, like I mentioned, my wife, she's in tech as well. She's still in tech. I left tech to do finance. She's director of IT for a defense contractor here in Charleston, and the tech part. I don't work exclusively in tech. That was I came out of the tech world and the defense world when I started my business, and so I needed clients. So I just made a spreadsheet of every human being I knew, loaded them into a CRM system, and just called everybody, um, and said, "Hey, I'm doing this now. Will you have a meeting with me?" And then sure, yes, I got yeses, I got a lot of no's, and more no's than yeses, but I got enough yeses to keep going, and people would introduce me and refer me. And so a lot of that initial list were guys I was in Afghanistan with, guys I was in the Navy with, and then a lot of people that had done in the BD role, doing business development for the defense industry companies in Charleston. In Charleston, the defense industry and the tech industry are very much overlapped. There's a lot of tech companies in defense and vice versa. So I just knew a lot of people in that space. The work is applicable to any business. I also work with trade companies, and I work with a law firm downtown, and I work with a dental practice and a dermatology practice. But those are just the people I knew, speak the language, and that people refer me as well. And I have a really strong network as well. So in networking, particularly in the defense industry, is very important. So I think a lot of people just like working with me, because I can help their business in other ways by, client A is looking to acquire a new company. I know client B is looking for his exit strategy, wants to sell his company. I'm not an M&A guy, but I can make introductions, and I'm a hellacious networker. So yeah,
So yeah, I
that
mean that's
that
how we met.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love going to networking events. I just love meeting people. It's a good business to be in if you like, meeting people and talking to people.
Oh yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks again for working after work by hopping on this podcast. Definitely appreciate it. I know we'll be talking after
Yeah.
this. I need to do my budget before we talk again. So we have something to work off of,
Yeah.
so you don't have to guess. But yes, thanks again. I think people are going to get a lot out of this episode. We went all over the place, but
Good.
really good. Yeah, thanks again. And hopefully we'll have you back on another time. But until then, everyone, take care. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you.